Hello, good morning. My name is Davika. I'm a climate tech recruiter at Climate People, and we're here with Natalie, our marketing guru, and Bryan Clark, who we recently placed with Watershed, which is super exciting. So thanks so much for being here, Bryan.
Yeah,
Uh,
happy to be here.
yeah. So if you just kind of like kick off the call, can you share a little bit about what your experience was like getting a job in climate and kind of navigating these barriers to explore the different sectors that you were really interested in?
Yeah, I have been interested in getting into working on climate stuff for a few years now. So probably longer than it should have been, for sure. And I was making a few transitions, like moving from more kind of mobile focused work to more web stuff, because I had it in my head that more of these projects were probably going to be web based. So trying to get more well-rounded engineering experience there before making the switch. But over this past summer, I kind of really got into the search more deeply. And the thing I was noticing was it kind of felt like trying to pick a major at college or something like that, but like a weird college where you don't know any of the subjects at all. Some of them seem familiar, but you could work in home electrification. You could work in I don't know, making electric vehicle depots for industrial applications of electric vehicles. You could work on making solar panel installation really easy. There's a ton of these wildly different sounding industries. A lot of them may, your role as, or my role as a software engineer might be similar in those different fields, but it's hard to figure out a lot of these industries are only, a couple of years old. At least the firms tend to be pretty young and small sometimes. And then some of them are much older, and they're these like large industrial players, people who ship a million heat pump water heaters or something like that a year or whatever. It's hard to figure out. Some of these are really big companies where they're not used to hiring software engineers in the same way. In other places, there's a few people. So that feeling of like, there's this huge catalog of things I could go do, and I don't know which one to start with. I found some Slack groups that were helpful. My climate journey was the one that was particularly helpful for me, and attended some career fairs through, I think it was terra.do. And I just had like a little Notion database of 40 or 50 companies, but it was feeling like hard to figure out how to take that first step. So I've got this list of 40, 50 companies, and if I wanted to go do an informational interview with one place, then maybe that informational review, they're like, can you apply tomorrow? And I'm like, oh, I'm just starting to look, and you happen to be the first one I looked at. I don't know, so it kind of felt like, I don't know, like if you're trying to get into like a double Dutch game or something, you don't know when to like make that first jump in, and you're kind of like, okay, I've done the research. I'm like, I think I'm figuring out the patterns of this thing, but it's so different from other career hunting stuff that I've done before. So I really appreciated working with Climate People, because you all helped me look at that list of 40 or 50 places and say like, okay, this chunk, probably not what you seem to think it is. This other chunk that you didn't have on your list is really interesting. You should think about it. And then within this area, here's a few firms that we've got relationships with. We know like they're on a good trajectory for the foreseeable future. This other place, maybe not great for what your particular interests or skill set are. And so it was really, really helpful to have somebody just say like, okay, we're going to go talk to these few places, and just get over that hurdle of like waiting to get into the double Dutch game.
Yeah, I think the way that you navigated the space and having like just kind of coming in and having so many interest in multiple different sectors. I know that we talked about like solar reforestry, like food and ag, just fintech, solar, like everything, and kind of looking at how you can combine your skills and from leading mobile design teams to kind of taking this shift into wanting to really start acting on stuff that's climate based. That transition, it's kind of like you've got to test and understand what you want and kind of set your intentions behind your search, so that gives you that clear path. And I think that the way that you executed that was like really amazing, and doing your research behind that is fantastic. So it all starts with like the conversation and kind of building from there to learn what works, and what you might want to stray away from. So yeah.
Yeah,
um
yeah, it worked out super well.
yeah.
Kind of along that same vein, Brian, when you were saying that, like before you got in, you kind of, you wanted to get into the space earlier and then you did, and then kind of all these different things were preventing you. And then once you got in, you got like kind of inundated with the resources. Was that fair to say? Was it like you had nothing, and then as soon as you got introduced, it was all of a sudden like very overwhelming?
Yeah, I mean, it's there's a lot going on. There's a bunch of big changes happening, whether it's Inflation Reduction Act or legislation in Europe, all these incentives and things that are shaping up. So there's just this Cambrian explosion of firms working on climate change. And you join one of these Slack groups, it's really wonderful. There's a bunch of people that are eager to help and point you in a good direction. People are super, super friendly. There's just so many choices. And it feels a little bit like, if this thing is expanding, which area do you want to wind up in? Because as this thing expands and firms start to specialize and things like that, maybe you'll wind up in, some cone of expansion over here, but then you realize a year or two later, you wish you were in somewhere else. And I think a couple of things that helped me with that was realizing, even though the industries might be different and the firms might be different, the skills that they're looking for are often quite similar. And especially if you're in, design or product management or software engineering or hardware engineering, there is a good amount of job mobility between those. So if you find something that you love, more a few years later, that can be okay too. It's more about like not sitting on the sidelines because you haven't found like the perfect one yet. And once I got to talking to places, that's when I really got even more excited than I was just reading, the about pages of these websites. So yeah, there's a lot of information for sure. A lot of really enthusiastic, friendly people. Like, jump in, the water's fine, but like there's a lot of it's choice paralysis as well. So yeah,
Sure.
really helpful to have a coach through it. Yeah.
Definitely. Yeah. Could you,
Yeah,
oh, go ahead, Davika.
please go for it.
Could you talk a little bit about the job that you're going to be taking and what you landed on?
Yeah. So I'm going to be joining Watershed as a product engineer there on their measurement team. I think they're changing some stuff about how their teams are organized, but yeah, it's so the gist of it is that companies make a lot of pollution, and Watershed is building this whole platform so that large firms, I think it's mostly companies at this point, but who knows, maybe it's universities someday, whatever, all sorts of applications, can measure and then plan and reduce their emissions. So there are certain standards that you need to meet when you're saying, we're going to be carbon neutral by 2030 or whatever. There are international standards for that. And so Watershed provides the tools as well as for planning and measuring things, but also for actually acting on and meeting those requirements, as well as generating certification that your company meets some particular standard, so that, I don't know, your company can go bid on a project in Europe or something that has a requirement that your company meet those standards. So I don't know a lot of the specifics yet, but I'm excited. It's a smaller team. It's growing really quickly. There's a bunch of interesting stuff to do, but the gist of it is, from what I understand, is that taking a measurement of your carbon footprint takes quite a long time. And I don't know if it's on the order of like months or something like that. And it's a very manual process, but we need this to be super trivial, easy for companies to do, so that it's not this month-long process that's slow. We don't have that many more month-long cycles before we're going to go over some big climate cliffs here. So we really need to speed that up and make it trivially easy if we expect that these places are going to have a chance of reducing their emissions. So that's kind of the gist of it from my understanding. But yeah.
I know, really well described. And kind of going back to like the very first conversation that we had, this experience that you've got that's very much transferable to any industry within the climate space. I know you wanted this blend of like design and engineering and working with a tangible tool. And when it came to exploring the carbon space itself, it is a tricky space to really understand the impact that companies are making. So how did you kind of feel navigating and learning about the space while you were doing that? Like while
Yeah. Yeah. I think a couple of things. Like, one of them was I had my initial stuff in my head about like what was going to be useful or more or less useful. And then having a handful of informational interviews with a couple places was really helpful. Some of them were saying like, we started out thinking we were going to do solar panel installation, but then we realized that the actual bottleneck is like financing for solar panels instead. And so that's like what we're lining up for. And in the case of my process, like just kind of started to talk to folks who had experience and ask them like, what are some of the yellow or red flag kind of stuff that you're looking for? Like, I don't know. For me, I don't want to do anything that has anything to do with crypto. Like no, thank you. And I'm sure maybe there's some useful application for it, but for me, it tended to feel more like bandwagon enthusiasm for crypto as opposed to like actually addressing climate change stuff. So that was one thing for me, was like, I'm gonna just, no thank you. There's plenty of other things I can go do that aren't involved with that. Other stuff would be, for me, I was interested in, my background is in design and engineering. And so I wanted to find something where I could kind of do both of those, or at least find a firm where the design pieces would be important for the product. And I wanted to work on something that was kind of in the heart of the business. Sometimes you're working on a project that's kind of a new initiative that's not the core thing that the company's concerned with. I wanted to find something that was in that kind of core. So yeah, those were some of the things that were helpful there.
Amazing. And when it came to like thinking about your career in climate, what did you originally think that a career in the space would look like?
Yeah, I had some sense that it would be working for smaller firms than I had previously done. I mean, so I had previously worked on about a 10 to 50 person team at Starbucks for a while. At Khan Academy was my team was about 10 people, but the company as a whole was somewhere between 100 and 200 during the time I was there. And then where I am now, it's like, thousands and thousands of people. So I figured it would be smaller than that. Some places are truly like, 3 people with, 6 months working on an idea, and they're looking for, founding engineer or something like that. For me, I wanted to find something that was a little further along, a place where I could kind of not have to be, the lead person, just for the season of life I am right now with 2 young kids. I didn't want to have to be up in the middle of the night because something's broken or something like that necessarily. I found that with Watershed, the product has to be accurate and useful and compelling. And that means it ties into some of the stuff in my career of, working at Khan Academy with education and explaining things and interactive explainable tools. The whole product is really meant to be presented kind of at any point. You should be able to connect your laptop to a projector and like pitch why this thing matters for your company to do something about climate. And so you have to have this thing that's just kind of always intuitive and compelling, and like, oh, what if we change this about our operations? How would that affect our 10-year plan? There's a bunch of really interesting stuff from the bits that I've seen and understand about it, where it's really using that like design and engineering piece to make this interactive, explainable thing that can then tell you like, okay, these are the most important, salient things that our business should change to make a difference quickly.
Definitely. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So I know you said you came from like a bigger team and then this is a smaller team. A lot of the candidates that we work with and people who are trying to get interested in climate are very scared or hesitant to work at startups because they think that startup just means inherent risk and that's not something that they're willing to dabble in. What would your response to that be?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely a thing. Like it's different to be working for an earlier stage company than a later stage company. And there's like risks and rewards and stuff like that with going to something that's earlier on. But I don't know, like in my case, I was feeling more like risk averse. And so I decided that's another piece about kind of looking for a place that's a little farther along than being a handful of people. I wanted to know that the company had good runway, that the company was growing, but maybe not like too fast. I don't know. But I think if you look at, I don't know, hindsight's always like tricky to reason about, but like if you look at the last couple of years, we saw a huge climb in equity values of these, big tech companies, and then a fall over the last, 7-8 months. And if you're working at a big tech job, like a lot of your compensation is tied up in that, and there's nothing you can do about it. It is closer to being a liquid asset, so I guess that is a helpful thing. But a few things about that cut through for me was like, one, if we're going to go over these climate cliffs, I don't want to be spending my, working hours thinking about my own personal equity or something like that more than I would. I want to get involved. I want to get find a place to make a person-sized contribution to this thing. And I don't know. I feel like for me, a lot of that like chasing the wealth thing is like, once we address the climate change, I guess that's fine. But like, I'm really not interested in anything that's not related to climate change. So for me, that's the bigger piece. But also, I mean, if you look at where a lot of the technology that companies are built on today, a lot of it started out with like big government incentives and legislation that restricted or changed what companies are meant to do. And there's a ton of stuff just pushing lots of growth in the climate direction. So I have no concerns about like the growth of this space, because it has to happen. We have to solve these problems. And it's just a question of like how quickly and how effectively we can do it. So I don't know, I feel a bit like, if you look at the last year, a lot of tech companies did like this kind of a thing. But if you're looking at climate stuff, like there's a wide open space. You can make a lot of improvements and contributions to it. And also, I don't know, just like find a place where it makes sense for you and get in. And if it doesn't turn out to be the right thing for you, you can try another thing. It's not like you have to find the perfect place that's in this perfect state. Like find something that's good enough and make it even better, because your contributions really do make a big difference in something that's as early and nascent as a lot of these places are. So that felt really compelling to me.
Yeah. You're definitely speaking our language. We're a little biased, but yeah, no, definitely. I think that intention behind why you want to get into climate is amazing. And you're right. Like we need people working on this. So thank you. Thank you for taking a job in this space and doing your individual part.
Yeah.
Could you quickly touch on your experience working with climate people?
Yeah. So I joined the My Climate Journey Slack group, and in there, a couple of folks had pointed me towards talking to climate people. So that was like, oh, if two people of the 4 or 5 people I've talked to so far have both mentioned that I should get in touch with climate people, and I should definitely go do that. And then Brendan and I had a call. It was really, really helpful to just get like, hey, we talked to all these places, and here's the handful that I think you should start with, because I think that would be a good use of your time. It's tricky if you're navigating by yourself. You don't really know anything about the company other than maybe what they posted in the Slack group and the job description and what their website looks like. But it's really hard to tell much else about the business from that perspective. But working with climate people, you all have long-running relationships with these people and can really describe the stuff that's not on the website in a way that made it really, really helpful to navigate, like what are the handful of places I should look at first, kind of a thing. Yeah.
Amazing.
Awesome. Perfect. So I think that was all the questions we had, unless Devika, you had anything else that you wanted to touch on.
No, yeah, this is great.
Awesome.
Oh yeah, sorry.
Quickly,
yes, Devika, not me. Oh yeah.
No, you too, Bryan.
Real quick, I just want to say that this is such a huge accomplishment because you stuck through the entire process, put in so much time, and dedicated a lot of effort into it. So I'm really excited for you to join the team, and I know Watershed is super stoked to have you on the team. So just congratulations again.
Yeah, I'm so excited and grateful to finally be getting into this. So thank you all for the help to find something that sounds really exciting, and yeah, super excited to get into this finally.
Hey, super exciting. Quickly, one last thing. So we donate 1% of every placement fee to a nonprofit. We have 4 options. I don't know if we actually sent them to you or not, so I can give you the information if you need it. And yeah, we would love for you to choose one of those for the 1% of your placement fee to donate to. Did you have?
Yeah, I can't remember the exact name of it. Okay. I think it was like Soul Farm or something like that.
Yeah, Soul Farm.
That's that one. Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, they're an amazing organization. Cool. So yeah, we will donate to them in your name. So thank you for getting a job in climate, and thank you for that donation. Yeah. They're doing really impactful work.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your help.
Yeah. Yay.
Thanks so much, Bryan.